Everything you've been taught about the dawn of humanity might be a carefully constructed lie. You were told that history began in Mesopotamia, with simple folk learning to cultivate wheat and build mud brick houses. But there's a crucial piece they left out, something scrubbed from the textbooks, buried beneath layers of sand and time. There exist stone carvings that shouldn't exist. Anachronisms etched into the very bedrock of civilization. Legends whisper of beings descending from the heavens when the world was young. Beings of immense power and forbidden knowledge, bestowing gifts upon humankind, or perhaps something far more sinister. And there are ruins, buried so deep that no one dares to unearth them, haunted by echoes of a past we're not meant to remember. And then there are the questions that no one dares to utter aloud. The forbidden inquiries that threaten to unravel the comfortable tapestry of accepted history. What really happened before the official story began? Who dwelled in those lands before the Sumerians? What secrets did they hold? What knowledge did they possess that we, in our supposed enlightenment, have lost? Did they command forces we can scarcely imagine? This is not just another video about ancient history. This is an investigation, a deep dive into the unknown. And you are now a part of it. Because what we are about to uncover together could shatter everything you thought you knew about our past. It might force you to question the very foundations of reality. Some whisper that before Sumeria, there existed another world. A world more advanced, more mysterious, more powerful. A world that was destroyed for reasons we still don't understand, or perhaps refuse to understand. And the clues are there, scattered like breadcrumbs, waiting to be found, if you dare to look. But there are powerful forces who don't want you to find them. People who would prefer you continue to believe the simple, sanitized, and safe version of history. Why? That is the core question we intend to answer. That is the driving force behind this quest. So, prepare yourself, because once you cross this threshold, there is no turning back. The truth about Mesopotamia is far stranger and more captivating than you could ever imagine. It's a rabbit hole that leads to the very heart of human existence, and it is about to be revealed before your very eyes. Imagine, just for a moment, that everything you know is merely the surface. That beneath lies layer upon layer of secrets, conspiracies, and forgotten lore. That the history you were taught was carefully designed to keep you docile, to prevent you from asking too many questions, to keep you comfortably numb within a preordained narrative. But some could not remain silent. Some refused to accept the pat answers and the convenient explanations. Some continued digging, investigating, connecting dots that were never meant to be connected. They pieced together fragments of forbidden knowledge, and what they found is both terrifying and wondrous at the same time. You will hear about tablets that predict the future with impossible accuracy, foretelling events centuries in advance. About constructions that defy the known laws of physics, structures built with techniques lost to time. About astronomical knowledge that would require thousands of years of continuous observation, data accumulated across generations and meticulously recorded. About objects that simply should not exist in their time, artifacts that scream of advanced technology and forgotten sciences. And about a conspiracy of silence that has endured for millennia, a concerted effort to suppress the truth and maintain the illusion. I am not going to ask you to believe everything you are about to hear. I only ask that you keep an open mind, that you observe the evidence with your own eyes, that you consider the possibilities, no matter how outlandish they may seem, that you ask your own questions, because in the end you must draw your own conclusions. And I guarantee you with absolute certainty that you will never look at ancient history the same way again. The lens through which you perceive the past will be forever altered. Welcome to the lost world of Mesopotamia, the world that existed before everything we think we know. Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, a place where the sands guard ancient secrets. You were told that civilization was born here, that everything began here. The first cities, the first laws, the first writings, the so-called cradle of civilization. But when you look closer, when you truly observe the details, something doesn't quite add up. It's as if pages are missing from the history book, as if someone has torn out the most important chapters, leaving gaping holes in our understanding. Archaeologists find cities that appear out of nowhere, fully formed, like Athena springing forth, fully armed, from the head of Zeus. They find texts that speak of earlier times, of lost ages, of worlds that existed before. They find objects that simply shouldn't be there, anomalies that defy explanation. And when you ask why, you are met with vague answers, dismissive shrugs. You're told that it's normal, that that's how history works. But deep down, you know something is wrong. You can feel it in your bones. The official story tells you that the Sumerians were the first, that before them, there were only nomadic tribes, primitive hunters and gatherers. And then, suddenly, as if by magic, a complete civilization appears, seemingly out of thin air, with advanced astronomy, complex mathematics, sophisticated writing, organized laws, and impressive architecture. How is this possible? How can a civilization jump from 0 to 100 without intermediate steps? It's as if someone gave them an instruction manual, as if they inherited knowledge from someone else. But from whom? That is the question that has haunted independent researchers for decades. A persistent itch they can't quite scratch. And the answers they have found are deeply disturbing, because they suggest that Mesopotamia was not the beginning, that it was merely the rebirth of something much older, something that existed before and was destroyed in a cataclysm so profound that it almost erased it from memory. The dates don't match, the accounts don't align, the artifacts defy logic. And the deeper we delve, the more questions arise, forming an ever-expanding web of mystery. Are we ready to face the truth, no matter how unsettling it may be? Or do we prefer to continue living in the comfortable delusion of ignorance? Think about this for a moment. Every civilization in history learned from the one before. The Romans learned from the Greeks from the Egyptians. The Europeans of the Renaissance learned from the Arabs, who preserved classical knowledge. It's a natural, logical, and well-documented process. But the Sumerians have no known teachers. They appear on the historical stage already knowing everything, already understanding complex astronomy, already mastering advanced irrigation, already writing sophisticated texts. It's as if a child were born already knowing how to read, write, and perform complex mathematical calculations. It makes no sense, unless someone taught them, unless they inherited that knowledge. And if so, from whom did they inherit it? This question leads us down a dark and fascinating path. A path that the official academic establishment refuses to explore. A path strewn with clues, evidence, and unresolved mysteries. According to the history books, everything is clear. The Sumerians arrived in Mesopotamia around 3500 BC. They built the first cities, Uruk, Eridu. They invented cuneiform writing, pressing reeds onto clay tablets. They created the first known legal system. They developed organized agriculture. They built enormous temples called ziggurats, and thus civilization was born. Simple, orderly, perfect. Everything fits together like the pieces of a well-assembled puzzle. The historians show you the evidence. The clay tablets with cuneiform writing, the ruins of the ancient cities, the remains of irrigation canals, the cylindrical seals with scenes of daily life. Everything is there, documented, classified, explained. No mystery, no doubts. Science has spoken. But here is where the problem begins. Because when you observe carefully, when you ask the uncomfortable questions, the perfect narrative begins to crumble. First, there is the issue of speed. Civilizations typically take thousands of years to develop. They need time to experiment, to fail, to learn from their mistakes. But the Sumerians seem to have jumped straight to the top. Their writing shows no signs of primitive evolution. It appears already formed, already complete. Their mathematics is surprisingly advanced from the beginning. Their astronomy reveals details of the sky that they should not be able to observe without sophisticated instruments. Second, there is the problem of teachers. Every civilization learns from someone. The Greeks learned from the Egyptians, the Romans from the Greeks. But the Sumerians, according to the official story, had no teachers. They emerged from nothing, fully formed, without known predecessors. Third, there are their own texts. The Sumerians themselves spoke of earlier times. They spoke of kings who ruled before the Great Flood. They spoke of gods who came down from the sky and taught humanity. They spoke of lost golden ages. But the official history ignores these texts, dismissing them as mythology, fantasy, primitive religion. It discards them without really investigating what they might mean, what grains of truth they might contain. You are told that the Sumerians invented the wheel, but the oldest wheel that has been found is already a complex object with axles and bearings. There are no failed prototypes, no primitive versions. Just the fully functional wheel appearing as if from nowhere. The same is true of writing. The oldest tablets already show a complex system with hundreds of symbols. Where are the first attempts? Where are the beginner's mistakes? Where are the evolutionary stages that every technology must have? They don't exist. Or at least we haven't found them. And this is deeply strange. Sumerian architecture also presents problems. The ziggurats were massive constructions, with thousands of perfectly placed bricks, complex drainage systems, and monumental staircases. But before the ziggurats, there is no evidence of intermediate constructions. It's as if the Sumerians woke up one day knowing how to build giant monuments. Their medical knowledge was also astonishing. They performed complex surgeries, knew hundreds of medicinal plants, and had treatises on anatomy. All of this appears documented very early in their history, without apparent evolution, without a period of learning. The official narrative asks us to accept that all of this arose spontaneously, that a civilization appeared out of nowhere with all this knowledge already developed, and that we must accept it without asking uncomfortable questions. And here is where the official story begins to tremble. Because the inconsistencies are not small. They are not minor details that can be ignored. They are enormous. They are glaringly obvious. And they are everywhere. Take the city of Uruk, for example. It appears in the historical record around 3200 BC. It is already a huge city, with thousands of inhabitants, complex canal systems, and monumental architecture. Archaeologists find no primitive versions of Uruk. No small settlements that gradually grew. It simply appears, completely formed. It's as if someone built a modern city in the middle of the desert overnight. Or consider cuneiform writing. Experts will tell you that it gradually evolved from simple pictograms. But when you examine the oldest tablets, you already find a complex system with more than 1,000 different symbols, sophisticated grammar, and abstract concepts. There is no real evidence of those primitive steps that should have been there. And then there is Sumerian astronomy. They knew the planets of the solar system. They knew about the precession of the equinoxes, a movement of the Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete. How could they observe and measure something that requires thousands of years of continuous observation? Without telescopes, without precision instruments, without computers. The official history has no answer. It tells you that they were very observant, that they looked at the sky every night, but that does not explain how they could know things that require technology to be measured with precision. There are also the tools. The Sumerians built massive structures, cut enormous stones, and moved blocks weighing tons. But the tools that archaeologists find are primitive. Copper chisels, stone hammers, wooden levers. How do you build giant monuments with such simple tools? Experts say that with a lot of time and a lot of workers, but the numbers don't add up. Modern experiments trying to replicate these constructions with ancient tools have failed again and again. There is another problem that few mention. The Sumerians had an extremely sophisticated legal system. The Code of Uarnamu, which predates the famous Code of Hammurabi, already contains complex laws about property, contracts, marriage, and inheritance. These are not primitive laws. They are laws that reflect a highly developed society. But how do you develop such a complex legal system without centuries of prior experience, without cases to resolve, without conflicts to arbitrate, without time for society to evolve and need these laws? The Sumerians also had schools, places where they taught writing, mathematics, and astronomy. But schools imply that there was already accumulated knowledge to transmit. They imply teachers who knew and students who learned. Where did that initial knowledge that the first teachers taught come from? No one answers. And there is the problem of language. Sumerian does not resemble any known language. It is an isolated language without a linguistic family. All the languages of the world can be traced back to linguistic families, but Sumerian appears alone, unique, without relationship to anything before or after. It's as if it fell from the sky. Experts say it is just a linguistic curiosity. But there is another explanation. What if Sumerian is so different because it comes from somewhere else, from another culture that no longer exists, from an earlier people who left only this language as a legacy? But wait, because what's coming is even stranger. There is physical evidence that the official narrative simply cannot explain. And we are not talking about theories. We are talking about real objects, real texts, real structures that you can touch with your hands. First, there is the Sumerian king list, an ancient document that lists all the kings who ruled Mesopotamia. But here is the strange thing. The first kings on the list have impossible reigns. One ruled for 28,000 years, another for 43,000 years. The list clearly states that these kings ruled before the Great Flood, and after the flood, the reigns become more normal, more human. Historians say that this is just mythology, that the Sumerians were exaggerating. But what if they were trying to say something different? What if they were measuring time in another way? Or what if they were recording something that really happened? Then there are the maps. There is an artifact called the Piri Reis map, drawn in the year 1513, but based on much older maps. This map shows the coast of Antarctica, but here is the problem. Antarctica was officially discovered in 1820, and the map shows it without ice, as it was thousands of years ago, before the glaciers covered it. How is it possible that ancient maps show Antarctica free of ice? Who mapped it? When? There are also the Baghdad batteries, clay jars found near Baghdad that date back 2,000 years. Inside they have copper cylinders and iron bars. When scientists filled them with vinegar or grape juice, they produced electricity. They are functional batteries from 2,000 years ago, but according to official history, electricity was not discovered until the 17th century. So what are these objects? What were they used for? And there are the megaliths of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, near Mesopotamia. Massive structures built 12,000 years ago, thousands of years before any organized civilization supposedly existed. Stones carved with complex animals and symbols, perfect circles of giant columns, all built by people who were supposedly primitive hunters. Archaeologists were stunned when they found Göbekli Tepe, because it completely destroys the official timeline. How can nomadic hunters build monumental temples? How do they organize a workforce of people? How do they carve stones with such precision? How do they know advanced geometry? The official answer is that we don't know, that it is a mystery. But there are researchers who say that we do know that Göbekli Tepe is evidence of an earlier civilization, a civilization that existed before the Sumerians and that had knowledge that was later inherited. There are also the Sumerian cylinder seals, small stone cylinders carved with images. When you roll them on soft clay, they leave an impression, but some of these seals show strange images. Spheres in the sky, symbols that seem to represent planets, flying objects. Academics say they are religious symbols, but some researchers see something else. They see representations of advanced astronomical knowledge. They see perhaps records of things they actually saw. And then there is the problem of elongated skulls. Skulls with strange shapes have been found in Mesopotamia and throughout the ancient world. Skulls that do not look like normal humans. The official explanation is that they are the result of intentional cranial deformation, a cultural practice, but some skulls have characteristics that cannot be explained only by deformation. They have larger cranial volumes. They have different bone structures. They are a mystery that no one wants to really investigate. Now comes the most disturbing part of this entire investigation. Because when you present this evidence, when you ask these questions, something strange happens. Doors close. Experts become defensive. Institutions raise walls. It is as if there is organized resistance against anything that challenges the official narrative. Academic archaeologists have a phrase that they repeat constantly. Extraordinary archaeology requires extraordinary evidence. Sounds reasonable, right? But in practice, what it means is that any discovery that does not fit with accepted history will be automatically discarded. It doesn't matter how much evidence you present. It doesn't matter how solid your arguments are. If it contradicts the established model, it will be rejected. There are documented cases of archaeologists who lost their careers for daring to suggest that ancient civilizations were more advanced than we thought. There are researchers who were expelled from universities for asking uncomfortable questions. There are excavations that were abruptly stopped when they began to find things that shouldn't be there. Why? Why so much fear of the truth? The answer is complex. First, there is academic ego. Entire generations of historians have built their careers on the official narrative. Their books, their research, their reputation. Everything depends on that narrative being correct. Admitting that they are wrong would mean throwing decades of work in the trash. Second, there is the educational system. Textbooks are already written. Study programs are already established. Changing the official history would require rewriting everything, retraining teachers, rebuilding museums. It's easier to maintain the status quo. Third, and this is the most worrying, there is the question of control. The official history tells us who we are, where we come from, what is possible. If that history changes, if we discover that ancient civilizations were much more advanced than we thought, then many of our assumptions about human progress collapse. And there are powerful institutions that don't want that to happen. So, they build walls, control access to archaeological sites, decide what is published and what is not, label independent researchers as conspiracy theorists. And so, the truth remains buried, literally and figuratively, under layers of sand and time. There is also an element of national and religious pride. Many countries in the Middle East base their national identity on being the cradle of civilization. Changing that narrative would be politically complicated. And many religions base their sacred texts on the accepted historical chronology. Challenging that chronology is challenging the beliefs of millions of people. That is why the guardians of official history are so fierce. They are not just protecting academic theories. They are protecting power structures, national identities, and religious beliefs. They are protecting a world order that depends on history remaining as we know it. But the truth cannot be suppressed forever. It always finds a way to come out. And increasingly, that truth is emerging through new technologies, through brave researchers, through evidence that cannot be ignored. The wall is cracking, and soon, perhaps very soon, it will collapse completely. But the truth has a curious way of seeping through. Despite all the efforts to keep it hidden, there are discoveries that never reached the public. Findings that were kept in drawers, forgotten in museum cellars, or simply never published. Take the case of untranslated tablets. In museums around the world, there are thousands, perhaps millions, of cuneiform tablets that have never been translated. They are catalogued, numbered, stored in boxes, but no one reads them. Why? Experts say there is a lack of personnel, a lack of money, a lack of time. But some independent researchers suggest another reason. Perhaps those tablets contain information that contradicts the official narrative. Maybe they talk about things that shouldn't exist. There is one particularly intriguing case. In the 1950s, a team of British archaeologists was excavating near the ancient city of Ur. They found a sealed underground chamber full of objects that did not correspond to any known culture. The objects were quickly catalogued, photographed, and then disappeared. Official reports mention the finding briefly and then changed the subject. The photographs were never published. The objects were never seen again. What was in that chamber? Why was it all hidden? No one answers. Or consider the forbidden excavations. There are places in Iraq that are officially closed to archaeologists, not for security reasons, not for lack of interest. They are closed because, according to unconfirmed rumors, they contain structures that shouldn't exist. Buildings made with construction techniques that are too advanced, artifacts that do not fit into any known timeline. The Iraqi government, with the support of certain international institutions, has declared those areas off-limits forever. And then there are the classified documents. Yes, you heard right. There are documents about archaeological excavations that are classified as state secrets. Why does a government? Here's the translation and expanded version of the provided text, tailored for an American audience, incorporating creative additions and deeper exploration of the themes. Why would a government want to keep information about ancient ruins a secret? What truths lie hidden within those documents that we're not allowed to know? Some researchers propose a startling theory. During the wars in Iraq, U.S. soldiers stumbled upon extraordinary artifacts, objects so strange and inexplicable that they were immediately confiscated, whisked away to unknown locations, never to be studied publicly or revealed to the world. There are whispers, hushed testimonies from soldiers who speak of entering ancient ruins and encountering things that defied explanation. Subterranean chambers humming with advanced technology. Texts etched in languages no one recognized. Objects that glowed with their own inner light. But these accounts are dismissed, written off as mere fantasies fueled by post-traumatic stress or outright lies. Then there's the infamous case of the Baghdad Museum. During the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the museum was ransacked. Thousands of priceless artifacts vanished into the chaos. The official story paints a picture of common looting, of thieves seizing an opportunity amidst the turmoil. But some researchers suspect something far more sinister. They believe the looting was targeted, orchestrated. Specific artifacts, containing sensitive information about the ancient past, were intentionally taken. Artifacts whispered to hold secrets that could rewrite history. And there are more stories of excavations abruptly halted the moment something unusual was unearthed. Archaeologists threatened into silence, photographs vanishing from archives, and reports subtly altered before publication. A pattern of suppression that becomes undeniable once you start to notice it. The burning question is why? What secrets of the ancient past are so dangerous, so volatile, that they must be concealed at all costs? Some whisper of evidence pointing to a more advanced civilization that predates known history. Others believe it's proof of contact with beings from other worlds. And still, others argue that it's simply evidence that the accepted version of history we've all been taught is fundamentally wrong. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. Someone, somewhere, does not want us to know the complete truth about Mesopotamia and the ancient world. But all is not lost. Beyond the established academic circles, a growing group of independent researchers is emerging, individuals who are not beholden to universities or government institutions, free to ask the questions that others dare not. These researchers come from diverse backgrounds. Some are engineers who analyze ancient structures and declare, "This couldn't have been built with the tools they tell us they had." Others are astronomers who study the alignments of ancient temples, uncovering impossible knowledge of the heavens. There are geologists who examine erosion patterns on monuments and conclude they are thousands of years older than official history acknowledges. One of these researchers delved into the Sumerian texts about the Anunnaki. According to the tablets, the Anunnaki were beings who descended from the sky and taught humans the arts of civilization. The official story relegates them to mere mythological gods. But this researcher noticed something intriguing. The descriptions of the Anunnaki are extraordinarily detailed. They don't read like vague myths. They sound like historical records. They describe where they came from, what they did, what they looked like, and what technology they used. Another researcher focused on the striking similarities between ancient cultures. He discovered that the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Mayans, and other ancient civilizations all share nearly identical stories. They tell of a great flood that destroyed the previous world. They speak of gods who descended from the sky. They recount a lost golden age. They hint at knowledge inherited from a previous civilization. How is it possible that cultures separated by oceans and millennia could tell the same stories? The most logical explanation would be that they all inherited those stories from a common source, a mother civilization that existed before them all. There are also researchers who employ modern technology to make discoveries that traditional archaeology cannot. They use satellites to detect buried structures. They use ground-penetrating scanners to see what lies beneath the sand without the need for excavation. And what they're finding is astonishing. Entire cities buried beneath the desert, complexes of buildings that have never been excavated, structures that official archaeology doesn't even know exist. But when they try to publish their findings, scientific journals reject them. When they try to excavate, permits are denied. These researchers are also re-examining ancient texts with fresh eyes, without the biases of academia, without the need to make everything fit the established narrative. And they're finding fascinating things. descriptions of advanced technology in texts that are supposedly just mythology, references to scientific knowledge that shouldn't exist, chronologies that suggest a far longer and more complex history than we've been taught. One researcher discovered that the measurements used in ancient constructions across different cultures are identical. The Egyptian royal cubit is the same as certain Mesopotamian measures. How is this possible if these cultures never met? The obvious explanation is that both inherited that system of measurement from a common, earlier source. Another researcher studied the astronomical alignments of ancient temples. He found that many are aligned not with the stars as they appear today, but as they appeared thousands of years ago. This means that either they were built much earlier than we think, or they were designed using knowledge of what the sky looked like in the distant past. Both options are problematic for official history. There are linguistic researchers who study ancient languages and uncover unexpected connections, similar words in cultures that supposedly never had contact, grammatical structures that suggest a common origin, as if all these languages descended from a lost mother tongue. And then there are the researchers who simply ask the obvious questions that no one else does. If the Sumerians invented writing, why does it appear so developed from the start? If they invented the wheel, where are the prototypes? If they developed astronomy, how did they know things that require thousands of years of observation? These simple questions have no satisfactory answers within the official narrative, and that is significant. So, if the official narrative doesn't explain all the evidence, what are the alternatives? What other theories could explain the mysteries of Mesopotamia? This is where things get really interesting. First theory, the lost civilization. This theory suggests that before the Sumerians, another, far more advanced civilization existed. This civilization reached a level of knowledge and technology that rivaled or surpassed our own. But something happened. A global catastrophe, perhaps a massive flood, perhaps extreme climate change, perhaps something worse. This civilization was almost completely destroyed. Only small groups of people survived, refugees who escaped the disaster. These survivors carried with them fragments of ancient knowledge, and when the world stabilized, they taught the new generations. The Sumerians would then be the heirs of this lost civilization, not the original creators. This theory would explain why Sumerian civilization appears so developed from the beginning. It would explain the advanced knowledge they shouldn't have. It would explain the references in their texts to earlier times and pre-Diluvian kings. Second theory, the ancient teachers. This theory proposes that there was contact with more advanced beings. Some call them extraterrestrials. Others call them the ancient gods. Others simply call them the teachers. These beings arrived on Earth in remote times and decided to help primitive humanity. They taught them agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, writing, architecture. Humans recorded these encounters in their ancient texts, but over time, the truth became mixed with mythology. The gods who descended from the sky might have been real, only they weren't supernatural. They were visitors with advanced technology. This theory would explain the detailed descriptions of the Anunnaki in the Sumerian texts. It would explain the impossible astronomical knowledge. It would explain the constructions that defy our understanding of ancient capabilities. Third theory, the cycles of civilization. This theory suggests that human history is not linear, but cyclical. Civilizations arise, reach great heights, and then collapse. This has happened many times before. Each time, humanity has to start over, but some knowledge survives. The Sumerians would be at the beginning of our current cycle but inherited knowledge from the previous cycle. That's why their civilization seems to appear fully formed. They didn't start from scratch. They started with the remnants of the previous world. This theory is supported by the many references in ancient texts to previous worlds that were destroyed. The Hindus speak of yugas, cycles of time where the world is created and destroyed. The Mayans speak of multiple eras that ended in catastrophes. The Greeks spoke of ages of gold, silver, and bronze that preceded their era. Fourth theory, innate knowledge. A less popular but intriguing theory suggests that ancient humans had mental capacities that we have lost. Perhaps they could access information in ways we don't understand. Perhaps they had a connection to something larger, something that allowed them to know things without needing to learn them in a conventional way. This theory suggests that the development of civilization was not so much a process of inventing new things but of remembering forgotten things. Fifth theory, the Great Catastrophe. This theory focuses on the event that destroyed the previous world. It proposes that about 12,000 years ago, something terrible happened. Perhaps a comet impacted Earth. Perhaps there was a reversal of the magnetic poles. Perhaps massive volcanic eruptions, perhaps a combination of everything. This event destroyed almost all the civilization that existed at that time. It caused the flood that all ancient cultures speak of. It caused a long period of darkness where humanity had to survive as best it could. And when the world finally stabilized, the survivors began to rebuild using the fragments of knowledge they had managed to preserve. Each of these theories has its defenders and its critics. Each explains some evidence but leaves others unanswered. Perhaps the truth is a combination of several, or perhaps it is something completely different that we have not yet imagined. What is clear is that the official narrative, the idea that everything began with the Sumerians spontaneously emerging from nothing, is insufficient. There are too many inconsistencies, too many unanswered questions, too much evidence that doesn't fit. But here is where the story becomes truly fascinating because Mesopotamia is not alone. The same mysteries, the same inconsistencies, the same strange stories appear throughout the ancient world. It is as if all ancient civilizations were connected by an invisible thread. Let's take the flood. The Sumerians speak of the Great Flood in the Epic of Gilgamesh. A man named Utnapishtim builds a giant boat and saves his family and the animals while the world is destroyed by the waters. Sounds familiar, right? Because the Bible tells the same story with Noah, but it doesn't end there. The Greeks have Deucalion, the Hindus have Manu, the Chinese have Gun, and the Native Americans have countless versions. The Mayans speak of multiple destructions of the world by water. In total, more than 200 ancient cultures around the planet have stories about a great flood that destroyed the previous civilization. All these stories cannot be a coincidence. Something happened, something global, something so devastating that it was engraved in the collective memory of humanity forever. And the interesting thing is that many of these stories include similar details. A righteous man is warned by the gods. He builds a huge vessel, saves his family and animals. The waters cover the world. After the flood, he repopulates the earth. These similarities cannot be explained as independent development. They are too specific. Or consider the pyramids. Egypt has pyramids. Mesopotamia has ziggurats, which are stepped pyramids. Mexico has Mayan and Aztec pyramids. Peru has pyramids. China has pyramids. Bosnia has what some believe are buried pyramids. Indonesia recently discovered pyramidal structures. Why did cultures that supposedly never met build the same structures? And not only did they build them, but they built them with similar techniques, with similar astronomical alignments, with similar ritual purposes. The official answer is that the pyramidal form is natural, that any culture that wants to build high eventually arrives at that form. But that doesn't explain the similarities in the details. It doesn't explain why they all used massive stones. It doesn't explain why they all had advanced astronomical knowledge. Then there are the gods. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, gods who descended from the sky. The Egyptians spoke of the Neteru, gods who came from the stars. The Mayans spoke of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent who descended from the sky. The Hindus speak of the Vimanas, flying ships of the gods. The Native Americans speak of the Sky Masters. They all talk about the same thing. Advanced beings who came from above and taught humanity. It's not vague mythology. They are detailed descriptions with names, with specific actions, with chronologies. And there are the symbols. The spiral appears in ancient art from all cultures. The symbol of the eye, the cross, the circle with a dot in the center, identical symbols in cultures that supposedly never had contact. Why? Some researchers suggest that these symbols come from a common mother culture, a civilization that existed before and that influenced all others. Others suggest that they represent universal knowledge that was transmitted to all cultures by the same teachers. There is also the issue of metallurgy. Ancient civilizations around the world developed advanced techniques for working with metals at the same time. They knew how to create bronze, they knew how to melt gold, they knew how to work copper, and they did it using similar techniques. How is this possible if they were isolated from each other? Agriculture also presents mysteries. Wheat was domesticated in Mesopotamia, corn in America, rice in Asia. But the process of plant domestication is long and complex. It takes generations of careful selection. However, in all these regions, developed agriculture appears relatively quickly, as if someone knew what to do, as if the knowledge were there, just waiting to be applied. And then there are the megalithic constructions. Structures made with giant stones appear all over the world. Stonehenge in England, Karnak in France, Baalbek in Lebanon, Tiwanaku in Bolivia, Easter Island. Japan has underwater structures that appear to be ancient constructions. All these structures use enormous stones. All show precision in their construction. All are aligned with astronomical events, and all are much older than official history comfortably accepts. The pattern is clear. There are connections between ancient civilizations that the official narrative does not recognize. Connections that suggest a common source of knowledge, a mother culture or teachers who traveled the world teaching, or perhaps a network of communication that we don't understand. Whatever it is clear that the ancient world was much more connected than we were taught. And now we come to one of the most disturbing parts of this investigation. The knowledge that ancient civilizations possessed and that we have lost. Knowledge they shouldn't have, technologies that supposedly didn't exist. Sumerian astronomy knew things that we didn't rediscover until the modern era. They knew that the Earth was round when everyone was supposed to believe it was flat. They knew the outer planets of the solar system, which cannot be seen with the naked eye. They knew about the precession of the equinoxes, a movement so slow that it requires thousands of years of continuous observation to detect. How did they know? With what instruments did they measure these phenomena? The official answer is that they were very good observers, but that is not enough. You can't see Uranus and Neptune without a telescope. You can't measure the precession of the equinoxes in a single human life. It requires observations spanning thousands of years, unless someone gave them that information, unless they inherited it from a previous civilization that did have the time and technology to make those observations. Babylonian mathematics, heir to the Sumerians, was incredibly advanced. They used a base 60 system which we still use today to measure time and angles. They could solve complex equations, calculate square roots, and understood concepts that we didn't rediscover until the Renaissance. Why a base 60 system is extremely difficult to use compared to our decimal system. Unless you have very advanced mathematical reasons to prefer it. Unless you are doing complex astronomical calculations where base 60 has advantages, and they knew how to use it with an ease that suggests a long time of practice. They weren't inventing it. They were using it. Ancient metallurgy is also a mystery. The Egyptians knew how to work with granite, one of the hardest stones that exists. They cut perfectly straight blocks and polished surfaces until they shone like mirrors. Today we need diamond-tip tools to do the same. They supposedly used copper chisels. Impossible. Copper is softer than granite. It cannot cut it. So how did they do it? Experts have no answer. They say they used sand as an abrasive, but modern experiments trying to cut granite with copper and sand have been very inefficient. It would take years to cut a single block. And the ancients cut thousands of blocks with millimeter precision. There are structures in Peru made with blocks of stone so perfectly fitted that you can't put a piece of paper between them. No mortar, no cement, just stone on stone, fitting perfectly. And these stones have complex, irregular shapes, not simple rectangular blocks. How did they cut these shapes? How did they adjust them with such precision? Our modern engineers, with all our tools and technology, admit that it would be extremely difficult to replicate these constructions. Some say it is impossible with ancient technology, which means that either it was not ancient technology or our understanding of what they could do is completely wrong. And then there is electricity. We already mentioned the Baghdad batteries, but there is more. In the Temple of Dendera in Egypt, there are reliefs that show objects that look like giant electric light bulbs. There are cables, there is what appears to be a power source. Egyptologists say they are religious symbols, but electrical engineers who have examined the images say they look like functional technical diagrams, and if you look closely, The design makes sense from an electrical point of view. There is also the problem of transporting massive stones. The largest blocks in the pyramids weigh more than 50 tons. Some blocks in other sites weigh more than 100 tons. How did they move them? Experts say with ropes, wooden rollers, and many people. But the numbers don't add up. The friction is too high. The wood would break under the weight. And even if you could move them, how did you lift them to high places? How did you place them with millimeter precision? There are ancient stories that speak of levitation, of making stones float, of using sound to move them. Modern science says it is impossible, but what if it isn't? What if there were technologies we have forgotten? Technologies that would seem like magic to us. There is also Roman concrete. The Romans made concrete that was stronger than our modern concrete and got stronger over time, especially in contact with seawater. We lost the formula. For centuries, we could not replicate it. Only recently, using modern chemical analysis, did we begin to understand how they did it. But how did they discover it without our technology? And the steel of Damascus. Swords made with a technique that produced incredibly strong and flexible metal. The technique was lost. Even today, with all our modern metallurgy, we cannot exactly replicate the original Damascus steel, the Greek fire, an incendiary weapon used by the Byzantine Empire that burned in the water. The formula was lost. We never recovered it. We know it existed because it is documented in multiple sources, but how they did it is a mystery. These are just a few examples. There are dozens more. Knowledge that ancient civilizations had and that we have lost. Technologies that we cannot replicate, techniques that we do not understand. And this leads us to a disturbing question. If we have lost so much knowledge in just 2,000 years, how much more was lost in the thousands of years before? How much knowledge did the civilization before the Sumerians have? And what technologies did they possess that would have seemed impossible even to the Sumerians? Despite decades of research, despite thousands of excavations, despite millions of artifacts recovered, there are fundamental questions about Mesopotamia that remain unanswered. Questions that we should be able to answer, but we cannot. Here is the translation and expanded version of the provided text. Question number 1. Who were the original inhabitants of Mesopotamia? Official history proclaims the Sumerians as the first, but mounting evidence hints that when the Sumerians arrived, they encountered people already living there, a people possessing their own distinct culture and language. These pre-Sumerians were known to them as the Ubaidians. Our knowledge of them is frustratingly limited. We know little about their origins, the extent of their knowledge, or the reasons for their disappearance. Archaeological digs reveal that the oldest Mesopotamian cities contain layers of occupation predating the Sumerians, layers that are often either ignored or minimized. Why? What lies within these layers that we are hesitant to examine? Artifacts from the Ubaidian culture are peculiar, to say the least. They include figurines with elongated heads and large, prominent eyes. These figures hardly resemble typical humans. Some archaeologists dismiss them as stylized representations, yet their consistency across numerous finds suggests something more. It's as if they were portraying something real, something they witnessed. Question number 2. Where did the Sumerians acquire their profound knowledge? This is perhaps the biggest question of all. In their own texts, the Sumerians themselves claim that the gods imparted knowledge to them. Specifically, Enki, the god of wisdom, gifted them with the knowledge of all arts and sciences. We can dismiss this as mere mythology, or we can dare to ask, what does it truly mean? Who was Enki? Was he merely a king deified after his death? Was he a visitor from another land? Or was he something more? Ancient texts describe Enki as arriving from the Abzu, which official translations interpret as a subterranean freshwater ocean. However, some researchers propose that Apsu might refer to a different place altogether, a distant location, perhaps even beyond our planet. Could it be a celestial origin? Question number 3. What cataclysm destroyed the previous world? Nearly every ancient culture speaks of a great catastrophe. The Sumerians refer to it as the deluge. The Bible calls it Noah's flood. Geologists have indeed found evidence of massive floods in Earth's past. But was it just a flood? Or was something else at play? There are theories galore: comets impacting the Earth, rapid melting of glaciers at the end of the last ice age, massive volcanic eruptions, shifts in Earth's orbit. Something catastrophic occurred, something that decimated entire civilizations. But what was it exactly? Compelling physical evidence exists of a global catastrophe. Layers of sediment revealing massive flooding, abrupt animal extinctions, drastic climate changes occurring in a remarkably short period, all pointing towards a cataclysmic event approximately 11,000 to 13,000 years ago, aligning precisely with the time frame of the deluge as described in ancient texts. Question number 4. Where are the other cities? Archaeologists have excavated the major Sumerian cities, but ancient texts speak of many more cities that we have never found. Locations explicitly mentioned in tablets, yet absent from any modern map. Are they buried beneath the sands, awaiting rediscovery? Or were they destroyed so utterly that nothing remains? Or perhaps they lie underwater. Sea levels were significantly lower 12,000 years ago. Many ancient coastal cities would now be submerged beneath the ocean's surface. Indeed, underwater structures are being discovered in various locations around the world. Structures that appear to be artificial, human-made, but they are often disregarded because they don't fit neatly into the accepted timeline. Question number 5. Why did they stop building? At some point, monumental construction simply ceased. The ziggurats were no longer built. Advanced techniques were forgotten. It is as if the civilization entered a period of decline. But why? What happened to cause such a loss of knowledge and ability? Some propose resource depletion. Others cite warfare or climate change. However, none of these explanations are entirely satisfactory. What was lost was not merely the ability to construct magnificent structures, but knowledge itself, as if the connection to the very source of that knowledge had been severed. Question number 6. What secrets lie within the untranslated tablets? As previously mentioned, thousands of cuneiform tablets remain unread, residing in museums and storage facilities. What secrets do they hold? What untapped information lies within? Some researchers speculate that among these tablets could be the key to unlocking the true origins of Sumerian civilization. Question number 7. Why are there so many similarities with other cultures? The coincidences are too numerous to ignore. The same symbols, the same stories, the same construction techniques, the same beliefs about gods descending from the heavens. Were all these cultures somehow connected? Or did they all inherit from a common source? And if so, what was that source? These questions lack satisfactory official answers, leading only to speculation, theories, and mystery. Perhaps that is intentional. Perhaps there are those who prefer these questions to remain unanswered. And here we stand, caught in the crossfire of a war of ideas. On one side, the official history, championed by universities, governments, and scientific institutions, armed with textbooks, museums, and authority. On the other side, independent researchers, alternative theorists, individuals asking uncomfortable questions, labeled as pseudoscientists, conspiracy theorists, or mere dreamers. This conflict is not new. It has persisted since archaeology became a formal science. It is not really about evidence. It is about power, about control, about who has the right to dictate what is considered truth. The official narrative has immense advantages. Money, control over access to archaeological sites, the power to decide what is taught in schools, and the ability to publish in established scientific journals. It has the stamp of approval from authority. However, it also has a fundamental weakness. It is trapped within its own paradigms. When something contradicts the established model, it must be dismissed or ignored. It cannot adapt, it cannot evolve, because admitting it is wrong would mean the collapse of the entire system. Imagine being a history professor who has taught the same narrative for 30 years. You have written books about it, delivered lectures, trained generations of students. Now, someone comes along and claims that everything is wrong, that there is evidence of an earlier, more advanced civilization. What would you do? Most would defend their position vehemently. Accepting that you are wrong would mean admitting that you wasted your career teaching incorrect information. Alternative researchers, on the other hand, have freedom. They are not beholden to institutions, they have no careers to protect. They can ask the questions that others dare not ask. They can follow the evidence wherever it leads, without fear of losing funding or reputation. However, they also have weaknesses. Without access to official sites, without funding for large-scale excavations, and without the backing of institutions, it is difficult to prove their theories. And some, it must be admitted, allow their imaginations to run wild, far beyond what the evidence actually supports. Not all independent researchers are rigorous. Some make outlandish claims based on flimsy evidence, and this is exploited by the academic establishment to discredit all alternative researchers, even the serious ones. The result is a stalemate, with the truth trapped in the middle. Evidence that contradicts the official narrative is ignored. Alternative theories are ridiculed without genuine investigation, and the public is left confused, unsure of whom to trust. But something is changing. Technology is democratizing knowledge. Anyone with a computer can access ancient documents, satellite images, and scientific research. Social media platforms allow independent researchers to share their findings directly with the public. Governments can no longer control information as easily as they once did, and more people are asking questions. Why does this version of history have so many gaps? Why is so much evidence ignored? Why can't we have an honest conversation about the past? There is also a generational aspect to this conflict. Older academics tend to defend the traditional narrative. Younger scholars are more open to new ideas, and the general public is increasingly skeptical of official authorities. Trust in institutions is declining, and when people don't trust institutions, they seek answers on their own. That is why documentaries about lost civilizations are so popular. That is why books on alternative history sell so well. That is why channels like this one are growing. People want answers, and they are not getting them from official sources. The conflict also has political and religious dimensions. Some governments use ancient history as a source of national pride. Changing that history is politically sensitive. Many religions base their chronologies on the official historical narrative. Challenging that history is challenging the beliefs of millions. That is why this is not just an academic debate. It is a debate about identity, about beliefs, about power. The answer is out there, buried beneath the sands, hidden in untranslated tablets, waiting in museum vaults. The question is, will we have the courage to seek it, and will we have the honesty to accept it when we find it? But it's not all pessimism, because we're living in a unique moment in history, a moment where technology is giving us tools that previous generations never had. Tools that could finally reveal the buried secrets of Mesopotamia. Satellites can now see beneath the Earth's surface. They use different wavelengths of light to detect buried structures. And they are finding astonishing things. Entire cities that no one knew existed, temple complexes hidden beneath the desert, ancient canals revealing irrigation systems far more sophisticated than we thought. One team of researchers used satellite technology to scan the Iraqi desert. They found the outlines of an ancient city that does not appear in any record, a city that may predate Uruk. But when they tried to obtain permits to excavate, they were denied without explanation. The technology is there, the cities are there, but access is blocked. Laser scanning allows for the creation of perfect three-dimensional maps of archaeological sites. We can study structures without even touching them. We can see details that would be invisible to the naked eye. We can compare constructions from different places and times to find connections. This technology has revealed that many ancient sites are far more complex than we thought. They have underground chambers, hidden passages, and precise alignments with astronomical events, all suggesting a level of planning and knowledge far greater than they are given credit for. Artificial intelligence is being used to translate ancient texts. Computer programs can analyze thousands of tablets in the time it would take a human to analyze one. They are finding patterns, connections, and hidden meanings that have gone unnoticed for centuries. One artificial intelligence program recently found a connection between Sumerian and Egyptian texts that no one had noticed before, similar words used in similar contexts, suggesting that perhaps these cultures were not as isolated as we think, or that they both inherited terminology from a common source. Ancient DNA is telling us stories about migrations and population mixing. We are learning that ancient peoples traveled much more than we thought, that cultures were much more connected, that the exchange of knowledge was common. It has been discovered that there were massive migrations of people across great distances, that populations mixed in ways we did not expect, that the ancient world was a much more dynamic and connected place than the static official narrative suggests. And most excitingly, there are places that have not yet been excavated. Vast areas of Mesopotamia that remain buried under meters of sand. Who knows what secrets they hold? What tablets are waiting to be discovered? What artifacts will reveal truths that will change everything we know? It is estimated that less than 10% of the archaeological sites in Iraq have been excavated. 90% remains buried. Entire cities waiting to be discovered. Libraries of tablets waiting to be read. Answers waiting to be found. Some researchers believe that we are on the verge of a great discovery, that in the coming years or decades something will come to light that cannot be ignored, something so big, so clear, so undeniable, that the official history will have to change. Maybe it's a lost city older than any known. Maybe it's tablets containing advanced technical knowledge. Maybe it's physical evidence of ancient technology. Maybe it's something we can't even imagine. There are rumors of discoveries already made that are being kept secret. Private excavations on unofficial sites. Findings that have not been reported. Artifacts in private collections that have never been studied publicly. If these rumors are true, and it is difficult to know, then the truth could be revealed at any moment. A collector might decide to make an important artifact public. A worker in a museum might leak information about hidden objects. An illegal excavator might sell something to someone who understands its importance. The question is, are we ready for that truth? Because if we discover that ancient civilizations were much more advanced than we thought, we will have to rewrite not only history, but our understanding of what it means to be human. We will have to accept that we are not as special as we thought, that before, in the distant past, humanity reached great heights and lost them. And if they lost them once, they can lose them again. That is an uncomfortable truth, a truth that challenges our sense of constant progress. A truth that suggests that civilization is more fragile than we want to admit. So here we are at the end of this journey through the mysteries of Mesopotamia. But it's not really the end, is it? It is barely the beginning, because now you know that official history has enormous holes. You know that there is evidence that doesn't fit. You know there are unanswered questions. You know that there are secrets buried beneath the sands of time. Mesopotamia, the supposed cradle of civilization, may not be the beginning at all. It may just be the echo of something much older, the rebirth after a great fall, the fragmented memory of a world that existed before and was destroyed. The Sumerians inherited their knowledge from someone. Their texts say it clearly. They speak of gods who came down from the sky. They speak of kings who ruled before the flood. They speak of a lost golden age. Why do we continue to ignore these words? Why do we dismiss them as mythology without investigating what they might really mean? Because it's easier, because the truth is uncomfortable. Because accepting that we are wrong about the past means questioning everything we believe about the present. The evidence is there. The ancient batteries, the impossible maps, the advanced astronomy, the constructions we cannot replicate, the texts that speak of earlier times, all pointing to a conclusion that official history rejects. That there was something before, something we lost, something that was erased from the historical record, but secrets cannot remain buried forever. The truth has a way of coming to light. And with the new technologies, with more people asking questions, with democratized access to knowledge, we are closer than ever to discovering what really happened in the ancient world, who lived before the Sumerians, what knowledge they possessed, what technologies they used, why they were destroyed, and what lessons we must learn from their disappearance. Because that is perhaps the most important question. If there was a previous civilization that reached great heights and was then destroyed, what can we learn from that? How can we avoid the same fate? What did they do wrong that we must do right? The answers are out there waiting. Some say buried in the desert of Iraq. Others say hidden in museum vaults. Others believe they are on tablets that have never been translated. Maybe all these things are true. Maybe the greatest secret of humanity is about to be revealed. Or maybe it has already been revealed and we simply ignore it because it is too uncomfortable, too disturbing, too different from what we were taught to believe. But you are now part of this investigation. You have seen the evidence. You have heard the questions. Now it is up to you to decide. Are you going to accept the official version without questioning it? Or are you going to keep searching, asking, investigating? I am not asking you to believe everything you have heard in this video. I am asking you to think, to question, to investigate on your own, because the truth does not fear investigation. Only lies need protection. If this video made you think, if it made you question, if it awakened your curiosity, then subscribe to the channel because this is only the beginning. There are many more ancient mysteries to explore, many more buried stories to unearth, many more hidden truths to reveal. The Egyptians and their impossible astronomical knowledge, the Mayans and their calendars that predict the future, the Nazca lines that can only be seen from the sky, the Sanskrit texts that describe weapons that sound like nuclear bombs, Atlantis and the references to it in cultures around the world. Each of these mysteries is connected. Each points to the same conclusion, that there was something before, that the history we were taught is incomplete, that the truth is much more fascinating and disturbing than we ever imagined. Share this video with someone who loves the mysteries of ancient history, with someone who is not afraid to ask difficult questions, with someone who wants to know the truth no matter how uncomfortable it is. Because together we are stronger, together we can demand answers, together we can unearth the secrets that others want to keep hidden. And if you want to continue this journey, if you want to continue investigating the secrets of the ancient world, there is another video waiting for you. Click on the video that is appearing on your screen now, because the history of Mesopotamia is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. A puzzle that encompasses the entire ancient world. A puzzle that when we finally complete it will change everything we know about who we are and where we come from. There was a world before ours, a more advanced, more mysterious, more connected world. A world that was destroyed for reasons we still do not fully understand. But the clues are there in every ancient tablet, in every inexplicable construction, in every legend about gods who came down from the sky. The truth is out there and together we are going to find it. No matter how long it takes, no matter who tries to stop us, no matter how deep it is buried, we will find it. Because the truth deserves to be known, because our past deserves to be understood, because only by knowing where we come from can we understand where we are going. Thank you for joining me on this journey, but remember, this is not the end. It is just the beginning of your own investigation, the beginning of your search for the truth, the beginning of an awakening that will change your life forever. See you in the next mystery and keep your eyes open.